Hello, everybody. Welcome to this segment of Tech Beat. We're so happy to have you with us here this afternoon. My name is Earl Foote. I am founder, CEO of Nexus IT, and host here of Tech Beat, where leaders learn, innovate, and grow. A couple of quick items. I wanted to just remind everybody that we will have open Q&A throughout the hour and at the end of this session. So any questions or comments that you might have relative to the topic for today with my guest, Ericdahl, who I'm going to come back around to here in a minute. Feel free to post those out in whatever platform you're joining us from. Eric and I will do our best to kind of keep an eye on those throughout the hour and get to those or save them towards the end of the hour. Let's see. Quickly, just wanted to also mention, keep an eye out for upcoming segments here of the Tech Beat podcast. We've got Josh Pitts, CEO of Shred Media, Shar Ignacio with Hire CXL Pro, Rob Harder, the Executive Director of the Christian Center of Park City, and Danny Tony of Tony Co. coming up over the next month or so, and a bunch of other great leaders and guests planned for upcoming months as well. I did want to mention a couple of quick items. First of all, this podcast is now available on Spotify. Just go search Nexus IT Tech Beat on Spotify, and you will find the podcast there. You'll be able to consume it in audio format from any device, anywhere. Certainly a great opportunity to listen maybe on your commute. And you can always, of course, listen at 1.5 times speed or 2 times speed to get all the content that happens here on Tech Beat in this hour, all the great advice and takeaways and experiences that the leaders and entrepreneurs that I bring onto this podcast share. I encourage you to check that all out. Check out the podcast on Spotify and go subscribe. And then also keep an eye out, because we will be adding the podcast in the coming weeks to Apple, to Google, and all the other major, podcast platforms. So keep an eye out for all of that in the coming weeks, and go subscribe, and hopefully you enjoy. We are posting past episodes right now, and we will be posting, current episodes moving forward as well. So keep an eye, and we appreciate your support there. So look, I want to get around to my guest of the hour, to the man of the day, my good friend, Ericdahl. So Eric is the president at Gravitate One, a sought-after marketing leader and speaker. In years past, Eric worked as a VP of marketing and at Navigator Business Solutions, and then ClearSource, where he helped enable significant growth and award-winning recognition for both organizations. Eric would go on to found RevMarca, an outsourced CMO firm, which benefited scaling organizations while marketing strategy with marketing strategy and execution at fractional cost. In 2018, Eric was an at age 40, under 40 candidate, which is pretty dang cool, my friend. Since joining Gravitate in 2019, Eric has enjoyed utilizing his creative eye to bolster marketing success rates and revenue for the agency's clients nationwide. When not hyper-focused on his work, Eric loves training, reading, adding to his shoe collection, and spending time with his family. And as I just found out as well, Eric actually paints. Move your head to the side if you don't mind there a little bit, Eric. I commented on Eric's painting there, as we were kind of getting ready for the session here, and he's like, "Yeah, I painted it." So I had no idea. We'll come back to that, Eric, but welcome, my friend. Thank you for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to have you, first of all.
Earl, thanks for having me, man. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. And, I think back to when I first met you, and we'll probably get to that a little bit later, but it was one of those instances where I've heard so many wonderful things about you. And, when I finally saw you in person, I thought, there's Earl Foote. And I think that it was kind of one of those aha moments. And so I'm grateful that I've been able to call you a friend ever since. And thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you. I mean, that's very kind of you, and probably unwarranted, but it is my pleasure to have you, as my guest this hour. And certainly, I'm grateful to have your friendship, particularly this time of year when we reflect more on those types of things. and it's always been fun to run into you around town, see you at different events and things. And then, by the way, like, you're one of the guys in Utah that I would classify as ridiculously handsome. Just the right height, the right build, the right hair. So
it's a mutual admiration. I've got beard envy right now, and wishing that my voice was much deeper and had that rich baritone feel to it. But not all of us can be Earl Foote. So thank you. It's like I say, it's a shared appreciation.
All right, fantastic. Well, I appreciate the compliments, my friend. So Eric, let's kind of dive into, who Ericdahl is. I want I like people to learn the real stories behind our local, leaders and entrepreneurs. And, you and I know that leadership and entrepreneurship is not all just kind of, ritz and glitz and fame and fortune. And there's a lot of drudgery behind it all, and there's a lot of unique stories of opposition and challenge and triumph, and coming from potential like underdog circumstances and really rising above. And so I love for the audience to learn a little bit about the stories of our guests. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? How did you go from Ericdahl, the kid that grew up going to high school and junior high, and probably played some basketball at your height. I don't know if that's accurate, but I would guess that's probably accurate. Maybe a forward position. Is that right?
So yeah, I was either a forward or a center, and I'm 6'6", so I'm tall, but I'm not center tall. And so there were some challenges there, but played a little bit of round ball back in the day. Never played football because Joan, who is my mom, never wanted me to play football. So just basketball. Grew up in Sandy, Utah. I'm a local boy through and through, here to the 801, and am grateful for it. I now live in Draper, so not far. I haven't branched off very far from home.
You moved a whole 5 miles, man.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the roots are deep here. But, you talk a little bit about background and what that looks like. And especially, I love how you kind of led me into this, where you've basically set the table by saying, look, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And, I think that anybody who's been in the business world for longer than a couple of years understands that. I served an LDS mission, came home and started to attend college, and really fell into this incredible job where I was managing accounts in the UK for a telecommunications company. And I was traveling the world at 21 years old. It was a wonderful job, had some terrific benefits. And I'll tell you what the service was, just really quick here, just so you can get a chuckle, especially for yourself in the IT universe. But we were very cutting edge at the time. We offered a service that combined email, voicemail, and fax all in one service. And at the time, it was like, that was a big deal. And so now I tell people that, and I laugh, and they laugh, and rightfully so. But it just proves that I'm getting old. But I had that job for a few years, and then transitioned into real estate. And so this was right around 2005. And at the time, the market was white hot, sort of like it is right now, where I got into real estate. We were purchasing investment properties. We were doing some development, and had some projects in different countries. We had a project in Scotland. We had a project in Budapest, Hungary. We had one in Belize. And we were moving and shaking, and I felt like I had the tiger by the tail. And in my mind, I thought, things are just going to pick up from here. It's just going to continue on this steady trajectory, and life is going to be good. And then we all know what happened in 2008 when the market came crashing down within real estate, and I was a significant casualty of all of that. And I went from feeling like I was on top of the mountain to really feeling like I was kind of sucking gravel overnight, and it was rough. But it taught me a lot of lessons. And eventually, I came across marketing, and I realized something along the way, which is I should have been in marketing for the duration, because it was work that spoke to me. It was work that allowed for me to wake up and to have a fire in my belly. And that had been missing before. Within real estate, I think real estate is fascinating. I enjoyed my time there, but it was also kind of miserable for me. I enjoyed the providing element, where I was able to make money and to provide and to do so very comfortably, but it wasn't work that I was really aligned with at my core. And so shifting gears after the real estate experience into marketing has been refreshing for me, and has enabled me to really feel like I'm utilizing my core skill set and doing work that really speaks to me on multiple levels. And so I'm grateful, even though I had to go through, this terrible episode in my life. That's the sans sunshine and rainbow component, but it led me to where I'm at today, and that's been very gratifying.
Yeah, very cool, man. So so first of all, I mean, I have multiple friends that were massively impacted by that 2008 crisis, and of course my business was impacted, but it was not as impacted as heavily. There were a lot of businesses throughout the economy that suffered, and as such, cut expenses on technology and IT. And so, we saw some impacts, but I had a lot of friends that were in real estate at that time, in title, in, mortgage loans, in, real estate agents. And yeah, it was massively disruptive. And like you said, just so hard to kind of go from being on top and feeling like, I'm in my 20s, maybe I'm in my 30s, and I just got it made. Like, things are really working out. And suddenly overnight, like, holy hell, what's going on? And I'm going to lose my house, and I'm going to go bankrupt, and I got to take care of a family, and what am I going to do? So that's, props to you for figuring out a way to kind of reinvent yourself and find something that you're passionate about, and as you said, resonates to your core. Obviously, when we look at that painting behind you, you have a creative side to you. I mentioned to you, when off camera here, that when I was younger, I was into art. In my teenage years, I would do a lot of sketch and I would do some painting, but I was never like, for me, it was reproducing other images. I would look at a picture and I would reproduce that or paint it. And maybe I had some talent there. It wasn't like, super developed, but when I look at work like what's behind you there, and that's just come from, your creativity in your head, like, that's a level of creativity that I don't have, and I massively admire. So it's obvious that, this creative side of you, marketing is a really good alignment for that. And I think it's really cool that, you've been able to figure that out. As you talk there, kind of a principle that I learned and made a big difference in the way I do business, and the success of my business since I really kind of learned the principle and began to practice it. And that is that really successful organizations, it doesn't matter what their product or service or offering is, but really successful organizations at their core, first and foremost, are a marketing and sales centered organization, right? And that may sound disingenuous, or it may sound, a little pushy, but the reality is, if you're going to be a thriving business that is growing and that is, doing meaningful things, with your business and your community and your team and offering gainful employment and all that kind of stuff, you have to figure out how to be healthy as an organization. And for me, one of the biggest, keys to that was understanding that, we first and foremost, while our product and offering is IT support and cybersecurity, first and foremost, we have to be a marketing and sales organization. And so, I've had a huge shift in myself as an entrepreneur and a leader over the past decade. And people who have known me that long have seen that shift from, Earl, the behind the scenes introvert, the geek, running the technology and the technology organization, to Earl, the guy that's in the public eye and producing podcasts and appearing on TV and, radio and whatever else, right? And that's been a significant shift for me, so I'm sure that you've seen some of the same. Maybe tell me a little bit about your journey with with marketing and how that's impacted your business ventures and what you're doing with Gravitate One.
Yeah, no, great question. And I'll kind of go back a little bit and even take it to a different level to begin with, which is, I posted something on LinkedIn a few weeks back and you commented on it. And I'll share that story briefly because ironically enough, as I wrote out that post, you were somebody who came to mind as I was writing this post. And so for everybody else, the story was that when I was taking on my first real responsibility as VP of marketing for a company called Navigator Business Solutions, I had just started the job, and it was my first job as a dedicated marketer. And so I was wide-eyed and going into this first all-hands meeting, which was at the beginning of the year. We had rented out this elaborate boardroom, and all the other executives from the country had been flown in. And we were all sitting around this table, and I'm kind of sizing everybody up, looking around and trying to understand who the faces are behind the names and vice versa. And just very nervous. And they had also flown in this gentleman who was a specialist in scaling businesses like Navigator. He was a consultant from Boston. And he was the first one to get up that morning and start talking. And so he got up to the front of the room and he says, I want to tell you something. At its core, this company is a marketing company. And I was already feeling pressure and heat being the new guy, but I felt every eyeball in the room turn and stare at me. And I thought, I think my job just became a little bit more difficult. But I completely agreed with him, what he was saying, because, if you're not looking at your business as a business that needs to have a brand presence, a business that is a marketing business, you're missing the boat. And like I said, as I wrote out this message, I thought about some of my friends who are business owners. And Earl, I got to hand it to you. You mentioned that you're an introvert. I'm also an introvert. And so, after this episode is over, we'll go sleep for a couple of hours and recharge. But, I thought about you and how much you have done to ingrain yourself into any initiative that allows for Nexus IT consultants to get in front of the right eyes. And, I think that that's something that needs to be embraced by so many other executives, where if they're taking the initiative and understanding how much it means if you can build a brand and if you can build a marketing blueprint to where you're consistently on the top of the mind of the audience that you're trying to attract, that's a winning formula. And so my hat's off to you, and it made me even happier when you commented on that particular post and said, this is an approach that I've tried to take, and I already knew that. But I think that we see things very similarly in this capacity, where marketing is mission critical.
Yeah, and I think that it's never been more mission critical than now than ever, right? Even in the past, just 3 to 5 years, I think there's been significant shifts in the marketplace that, if you are not a company who is kind of nailing your marketing messages, and your branding, I think that you are missing out on significant amounts of competitive leverage in the marketplace, and maybe even, declining as an organization, in my opinion. So let's talk a little bit about that. Look, when I got into this game, marketing was entirely different. Like the first things we were trying to do is little newspaper ads and maybe a little bit of radio and direct mail. We were doing direct mail, back in the day, like coupons and stuff that would go out in the mail. All sorts of kind of more offline sort of things. Of course, our business was established, in the .com boom. And people who know my story or our story, like my brother and I started this business with a $500 personal investment, $250 from each of us, as an e-commerce company. We actually started, peddling, IT gear, network gear, computer components and that kind of stuff, and then quickly evolved into consumer and business, related technology services. Anyways, what I'm saying is that marketing, 23 years ago or 25 years ago compared to marketing today in a very digital world were very different, things. I mean, social media wasn't even around at that time, and social media plays a massive role in most companies, organizations, in today's world. So tell me a little bit about maybe some of that evolution that you've seen, and then, what it means to really understand what branding is in a digital world like today.
Yeah. So I think I'll go back, and really, I've benefited from my father's career. My dad was a creative director for a company called Bonneville Media, and it still exists today. And during his heyday, I'd say of the 80s and 90s, he wrote and produced and directed television commercials for a variety of clients. And so you look at, traditional media, where we talk about the print elements, we talk about radio, we talk about TV, and where we're at now, where yes, traditional media is always going to have some sort of relevance. Now, what that looks like, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves over the upcoming years and decades. But this digital wave that we're riding on has really defined the game in a completely different manner. And going back 20 years, where again, we talk about that job that I started off with. I remember riding the train into the city for that job, and I would play Snake on my phone. And I thought, man, this is pretty cool. This is some high technology where I can play Snake on my phone, and that's a lot of fun. Well, now I can go on and I have all this power inside of my iPhone that enables me to, if I want to run campaigns, I can run campaigns. If I want to reach out to people who I haven't spoken with in many years, I have the ability to do that. And that's just the beginning of it. And I know that all of us understand this, but I think that if you're comparing it to where we've been, I once read a line that stuck with me, which was, back in the day when marketing initiatives would take place, it was almost like a slot machine where you put your ad spend into the slot machine and pull the lever, and you'd hope for the best results. Well, with the technology that we have now, it's now not a slot machine, it's more of a vending machine. You step up and you basically identify and say, I want to target this person or this audience, and I'm going to do it with this messaging. Then you put the ad spend in, and you know that you're going to get that exact type of audience, which it's fascinating. And so we've experienced this incredible evolution, and the wonderful part is it's just getting started. So to think about where we're going to be 20 years from now is it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but also exciting at the same time. So, but going back to the very origins, talking about branding and branding, I think it's important to really kind of to understand the difference between branding and marketing, because they are two different topics completely. They are related, but not as closely as I think many people would believe. And so if you're looking at the origins of branding, even to brand something, you can understand that it came from the idea of cattle ranchers who wanted to identify their animals. So it was a stamp of ownership where they would put this brand on their cattle, and then they knew who it belonged to. And for me, it was fascinating, because I remember even as a young kid, I found out that the Dahl family had ranchers in our lineage, and so they talked a little bit about the Dahl brand, and I was really, even at a young age, again, this speaks to the artist that I am. I was fascinated in wanting to find out what that brand looked like, and so I once saw it at my grandma's house, and I think that it was at that point in time I realized that not all Dahls were creatives. It was a very underwhelming brand. We'll call it a minimalistic logo on steroids. But branding goes back many, many, many years. And then as time has gone on, early packaged goods were identified with brands on boxes, and then it's just kind of taken this whole life of its own. And now we're here in 2021. So yeah, it's a little bit of difference between branding and marketing, but I think that it's good to kind of separate those two components a little bit, and I can talk a little bit more about that as we go.
Yeah, definitely. Some really great points there. Certainly, for many of us starting out as entrepreneurs and leaders, understanding that difference between a brand and how to establish a brand, and then, marketing that brand, are those being two very different things, and really understanding how to be effective in both of those things is, a significant challenge that, speaking from personal experience. So tell me a little bit about, maybe while we're on the branding topic, what are some of like the iconic brands that you feel have done an amazing job, over the last couple of decades of really establishing a presence in the marketplace with their brand, things that have really resonated for you? I know, like, most every time I see you, you're wearing a really cool pair of Jordans. So, that's got to be one of them, but tell me a little bit more about it.
Which is actually a really interesting story behind. I don't know if it's really interesting, but it's fascinating because my brand loyalty to Nike and Jordan, the Jordan brand, is kind of ridiculous. And it's one that I actually don't even understand completely myself, if I'm being honest. So several years ago, I had, some Adidas and Under Armour stuff in my closet, and I ended up selling it because I felt like I needed to be more brand loyal to Nike and Jordan. And even today, there's a part of me that feels like that's just kind of icky. But for whatever reason, they've got me on the hook. And I think that there's a couple of things behind it that make the brand experience so appealing, which in the case of Nike, I love their designs. And you couple that with the fact that, as a former basketball player, I've always felt like their technology was terrific. And then I tell you what is also a really strong component to Nike's outreach is their advertising. The fact that you have Michael Jordan, or you have, all of these athletes, even today you have, some of the relevant current athletes who endorse Nike, and that's a big pull. And so they've done a good job of getting me on the hook. Now, there's plenty of other brands, I think, that have done a very good job, whether, it's a retail type of a brand or a services brand or whatever the component may be. There's a lot of brands that have created these emotional feelings that are associated with the brand name itself, and that's where they've been effective. And so I've got a list here in my mind that I'll go through. And as I'm mentioning these names, I want you to feel whatever feelings that it is when I bring up these particular businesses, and I'll go through these quickly. But we'll start off with Uber. Okay, how do you feel about Uber? How do you feel about McDonald's? How do you feel about Starbucks? How do you feel about Tesla? And with Tesla, I'll interject. There's an old joke somewhere that talks about how a Tesla owner, and forgive me for all the Tesla owners who are listening in, they never refer to it as their car. They refer to it as their Tesla. And it's kind of the same thing when go ahead and Google me. Don't go to a search engine, Google me. Or, hey, will you pass me a Kleenex? It's not pass me a tissue, it's pass me a Kleenex. And so there was a woman by the name of Meg Whitman, who's been a very successful executive over the last couple of decades. And she once said, when people use your brand as a verb, that's something very remarkable. And so, when you think about Tesla or Google or Kleenex, maybe you don't necessarily have any emotional feelings to those brands, but they're strong enough to where you're using them as a verb, which that's saying something. And the final one that I'll use is Home Depot. For those who know me, I have a lot of talents, but fixing up things and being a handyman is not necessarily a great, strong talent of mine. But
I'm in the same bucket, brother.
Okay, so I know that if I go into Home Depot and say, look, I'm kind of inept when it comes to this stuff. Can you tell me where I can find a doorknob, or can you tell me where I can find some sandpaper? I know the experience that I'm going to get where somebody with a smile on their face is going to say, hey, that's on row 14. And that's a part of the brand that I don't think that can be duplicated, other than having an experience with Home Depot. I look at their logo, and it's an orange logo with white stencil font, and it's nothing remarkable. However, because of the experience behind it, their brand means something to me, and that's special.
Yeah, very cool. Some really, really great examples there that I want to dig into. Some other things here a little bit more, but just quickly, Cindy Hollingsworth said that she was asking if we could record this and send it to her I just wanted to mention to Cindy, I think she's already jumped off. She said she had to jump off for a meeting, but I just wanted to mention that these are recorded. They will go live immediately on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube as soon as Eric and I are done here with this chat. And then they will be circulated throughout social media, throughout podcast platforms and blogs and that kind of stuff later on. So Cindy, your wishes are command. This is recorded, and then you will have availability to it. I'll make sure that you have that as well. So our friend Josh Jemias, and I think I finally get your name right, Josh. I think, hopefully I did. Anyways, but I think Josh Jemias asked a really interesting question, and one that I've been thinking about as well as we've been having this conversation. And that is, what are some of the local Utah brands that you think are doing a really great job right now in the market at establishing their presence? Maybe similar to some of these large national and international brands that you just referenced, that many of which have become verbs, not just brands but verbs. Any local brands that you're seeing that are having similar sorts of success, or really doing a fantastic job at their branding right now?
So 3 come to mind, and I think that on the local front, and it's, as we all know, here in Salt Lake City, it's an exciting time. There's a lot of emerging businesses that have done things incredibly well. You always are turning around and reading about how VCs are funding some of these businesses with billions of dollars and becoming the next unicorns, and it's right in our backyard. And so it's very exciting. But I feel like 3 that come to mind as far as businesses that have really done some incredible brand work. Homey is one where, to me, I look at it and say they've got that beautiful seafoam color. I like their logo, but I like their message more than anything else. And they've done a real phenomenal job of really kind of capturing their unique value proposition in a way that has resonated. But I think that it's been really fascinating to watch that company grow. So Homey is one. Divvy, I feel like, has also done a terrific job, especially in the sense that what I love about Divvy is their campaigns have celebrated their clients. And so it's more of a shared stage approach, which I think everybody finds refreshing, rather than trying to make it all about themselves. They're saying, hey, these are some of the companies that we work with and have helped enable us to have a mutual joint success. And again, I think that's the message that is a memorable one, because it's a little bit different flavor and one that's refreshing. And then finally, I feel like and a lot of people are going to laugh at me for this because I'm such a sports geek, but I feel like the Jazz have done a real good job. The CMO at the Utah Jazz is actually an old high school basketball teammate of mine. And the way that they've done some things as far as promoting the brand and really kind of injecting new life into it has been, I think that Ryan Smith has done a great job of leading that charge, but you see that on every level with the Utah Jazz. And I've been really impressed, because for years and years, I feel as though, the Jazz, as far as merchandise is being sold in comparison with other NBA teams, the Jazz have always been at the very bottom of the list. But now you start seeing more and more Jazz memorabilia and jerseys around. And I think that there's a shared interest in the way that they are promoting the brand. And that's been a very good thing for the organization.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, as you travel internationally, how often you see Utah Jazz, memorabilia and jerseys and stuff, in odd markets where you wouldn't expect it as well, and a lot of that, it does go back to, the glory days of when you and I were kids and watching Stockton and Malone and Hornacek and, those championships against, Michael Jordan and the Utah Bulls and Scottie Pippen and stuff, right? I mean, those were iconic days, for this franchise and for us. And as I talk to people, like if I see somebody wearing a jersey and I'm in Europe somewhere and I see somebody wear a Utah Jazz jersey, I'm like, hey, why are you wearing a Utah Jazz jersey? And a lot of people will say, well, like I was a massive Karl Malone fan, and I still like watching the organization, and love watching Donovan Mitchell now, and and Rudy Gobert and that kind of stuff, right? And so I agree. The Jazz, I think, have done a really great job, and not just on a local stage, but really they've expanded that presence, significantly beyond some of the other, local brands that I see that I feel like are really kind of nailing their brand right now. Purple, I think, is doing a great job, and when they started doing their first, commercials with the breaking the eggs and stuff, and all that stuff. I think they've done a fantastic job. Thread Wallets, Roan, I think have all done a really good job. Dree, Donde, Pura, I think are all doing a good job at the moment with brands. And I really like this guy, and I really like his brand. That's Josh Little and Volley. I think Volley has the potential to become a verb, and not that the potential, it is locally in many circles. Volley is becoming, a verb. It's, hey, just volley me, right? Yep. Rather than, send me a text message or, let's schedule a time to call or whatever. And I do that all the time. Like, as a busy leader and executive, when there's somebody you want to connect with, but, you may not have time for weeks, to do that. It's like, let's just volley, right? Let's just volley. So it's becoming a verb. And I think that Josh, shout out to him. Good dude, good human being. I think he's doing a really great job of leading that charge and branding that organization and turning it into a verb that I think is going to become more, have a more national influence and international at some point. Well, cool, man. So I want to kind of come back to something you mentioned and dig deeper on that. You mentioned really effective branding connects with customer feelings, right? Mm-hmm. There's a reason that you wear Jordans all the time, and you felt so loyal to those Nike Jordans that you went and sold off, your Adidas and your other sneakers in your collection, right? So that you would have just, the Jordans in the closet. So tell me a little bit about, what is maybe some of the secret of success and formula there to brands that really evoke deep emotion? And you mentioned like Tesla, for example, the brands that evoke a cult following, right? How does that happen? And what's the formula to get there, maybe?
Yeah, and a great question. And I don't know that I have, the complete crystal ball, but I'll offer up some thoughts. I think that what you have to understand more than anything else is who your audience is. And so I'll be completely honest and refer back to my what I like to call my illustrious college career, which is a fancy way of saying that I'm a college dropout. But I remember attending a communications class right out of high school. This would have been my freshman year. And I was taught by a gentleman by the name of Art Kinihara. And Mr. Kinihara, there were two things that I remember from his class. Number one, and this is of less relevance, Seinfeld was kind of the king of sitcom television at the time. But Art Kinihara would always pronounce Seinfeld as Seinfeld. And it was kind of one of those things where he said it enough times where it almost became like a nails against the chalkboard type of a thing where it's like, no, it's not Seinfeld, it's Seinfeld. So that's the one thing I remember from his class. The second thing that I remember from his class is much more applicable to this conversation. And he taught me something that I haven't forgot. And I feel like as the years have gone on, it's one of those principles that just has so many deep layers. And it's this: audiences are fickle. And what does fickle mean? Well, fickle means that it's changing frequently. It's whether that's loyalties or interest or affections, it's always moving. And if you understand that your audiences are fickle, your brands have to be a little bit fickle too. Now, don't get me wrong, your brand has to stand for something, but your brand's going to evolve. Not as much as your audience will, but your brand will evolve. Now, what I feel like is common shared territory as far as what an audience expects right now, whether you're selling shoes or whether you're providing IT services or whether you're a marketing agency or whatever the case might be. I think that there's 4 pillars here that we're looking at. The audience expects a complete experience by, number one, having a memorable experience. So we're bombarded by messages, thousands of messages every day, but we all want to remember the memorable ones. We want to have a memorable experience. We've done a phenomenal job of teaching ourselves how to check out of the white noise of the constant bombardment of messaging that is hitting us on any given day. But we all still want the memorable experiences. We want, the second pillar is ongoing value. I think about Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, and he always is saying, add more value, add more value, add more value. Well, if you're a business owner, what are you doing to provide value to your audience? That's something that you have to do. And not only provide value, but double down on that and add additional value. The third thing is immediate fulfillment. And I love the saying that we live in a day and age where instant gratification takes too damn long, because it's true. I think we've all become spoiled little brats in a way, you know, in this Amazon world that we live in. And we expect that when we purchase something that it's going to be on our doorstep, that we have the ability to watch it immediately, that we're immediately entertained. So we want that immediate fulfillment. And if we're not providing immediate fulfillment, we're going to be behind a little bit. So that's number 3. And then number 4 is absolute transparency. And you know, when it comes to branding, I always say that it comes down to the 2 H's, which are honesty and helpfulness. If your business is providing honesty and helpfulness, you're going to be okay. And especially on that honesty component with that absolute transparency, there's been studies done, and I think that it was like 90% of you know, purchasers or clients or customers are willing to spend more money if they know that a brand is dedicated to being completely transparent at every touch point. And so we want that absolute transparency. We want to know what's going on behind the scenes. We want to have an understanding of what the story is and how that impacts us. And if you can do that properly, you're going to establish a brand that is memorable and rises above all the other stuff that gets lost and the businesses that are, you know, chasing after the quick dollar rather than the hearts of their customers.
Yeah, man, so many good nuggets there. I hope that everybody that is watching this just took some really copious notes. I did. First of all, those 4, those 4 items that you've identified there, you know, understand your audience. I guess really 5. First of all was understanding your audience, but then providing the memorable experience, you know, giving ongoing value, doubling down on that, you know, immediate fulfillment, and then transparency, you know, summing it up in honesty and helpfulness. Like, those are fantastic, you know, little nuggets for thinking about how you formulate and evolve your own brand. I mean, I think even very established organizations, you know, often we struggle with our brand, and market conditions shift, you know, and we struggle with our brand. And so, you know, using that as a framework to kind of back into and reverse engineer again, you know, and say, okay, how do we be fully transparent and very helpful? How do we add tons of value? And honestly, like, okay, you and I are here doing this because this content adds value to the community, right? Yes, it's brand awareness. Yes, it's marketing. I mean, let's just be honest and straightforward, and that's part of transparency, right?
Sure, absolutely.
But it is also is valuable content. You know, a lot of my community, a lot of our clientele, a lot of our partners are very grateful that we do this on regular occasion, because it provides good, consumable, actionable content that they can use to help grow their businesses, right? And help become better leaders. And so, you know, that's part of our strategy and our formula. Really, really great points. Thank you for sharing those, my friend.
Absolutely.
Brad Ellert asked, you know, who are some of the best Utah experts when it comes to branding, Utah companies when it comes to branding. And I guess, first of all, it would be Ericdahl and Gravitate One. You know, that's why we're here, you know, talking to Eric. And so, Brad, you know, feel free to reach out to Eric. Eric's a good guy. He'll take good care of you, and he'll be honest, and he'll add lots of value to you, you know, and help you through the process. Go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, you know, yeah, Brad, I would love to talk. And you know, there's it's not a cookie cutter approach when it comes to branding. And so understanding what your needs look like, if that falls outside of something that we could help you out with, I would love to give you some other names. I don't know that I want to mention any names on this particular show, just for the simple fact that I'm going to leave off some people and I don't want to offend them. But Brad, I would love to have a one-on-one, so feel free to reach out and we can schedule a call.
Very cool. So I know you and I had talked about, maybe some strategies, some suggested strategies that our audience here could use to really produce meaningful outcomes and results for their organization. So let's talk a little bit about that. How does that tie into branding and marketing, and what are some of your suggestions there?
So, again, I want to just kind of define the fact that branding and marketing are two different things. And so if we look at branding as being the why and the marketing being the how, we're off on the right foot. And then to take that a little bit further, think of branding as macro and marketing as micro. Ultimately, I guess that the brand is being where marketing is doing. So the marketing is the actionable component, where we're putting together a marketing mix and a blueprint as to this is what our plan of action looks like. But before that, when we're still in the branding component, we need to understand the identity of the business and really what kind of audience that we're trying to attract. And so in those instances, I love going through a client persona exercise and a value proposition exercise where we identify who the audience is here. And if we can identify who the audience is, and it's not at a surface level, we take it from understanding, okay, who is this individual? Meaning, how old are they? Is this a male or a female? How much is this person making a year? Where does this person live? How does this person consume their content? How do we reach them in marketing platforms? What kind of car do they drive? What kind of food do they eat? All of these characteristics that we have to capture so we can understand who the message is for. And we take this to such a level that we get to the very end and we say, okay, if this is the persona, what's a name that is going to be a fitting name for this person? And, for one of our clients where we sell products, it's Michelle's. She's a soccer mom. For another client of ours who they provide warehouse management distribution software. His name is Darren. He's a warehouse manager. And for another client of ours, which is a very high-end interior design group, we're marketing to Barbara, who is a 60-year-old woman with millions of dollars. And so we use these names, and you say these names. I know Michelle, I know Darren, and I know Barbara. I know what makes them tick. And once we understand that, we understand what in their world is giving them pain. And we also understand what gives them gain, what makes them happy. And if we can align our services or our products with those pains and gains to where they become pain reducers or gain creators, we're on the right track. And then we can put together a value proposition that says, okay, based off of Michelle or Darren or Barbara, this is the summary that is going to connect with that particular persona and allow for us to start building trust with them because we're speaking the same things. So that's one of the exercises that I like. Another one that I think is a lot of fun actually is just to identify, once we understand who the audience is, we also need to understand what the characteristics of the brand should look like. And so it's kind of a cart before the horse in that scenario, but some of the questions that I ask in this particular exercise is if we have two columns and one of them is one set of words, another one is another set of words, where are you going to check the box as far as where your business fits in? So on the one hand, you have, is your brand a traditional brand or is it a progressive brand? Where in that real estate are you going to put the Xbox? Is your brand exclusive or is it accessible? Is it corporate or is it friendly? Is it simple or is it complex? Is it familiar or is it disruptive? So these are all of the things that we're considering as far as, okay, this is who we are as an identity so that we know how to double down in our messaging and then get it out to all the channels that we need to and publish things that are cohesive and really unified across all those channels to where our message is being told with consistency and clarity, and there's no confusion involved.
Yeah. When a business really nails this too, you can see it. Like when the messaging is just consistently spot on. Doesn't matter what the medium is, if it's TV, if it's radio, if it's, social media, it doesn't matter, if it's a print ad. When they've really understood these principles and they've nailed it, like, you can see it, right? And conversely, you can understand when a business hasn't nailed it, when they're like, the messaging is very discombobulated, right?
Yes.
And I've been very guilty of that, myself in my 23-year journey, and still, frankly, something that I've been working on. In fact, as you talk about this, and identifying it, and in fact, if I just back up really quick, I would say one of the biggest things that I see most entrepreneurs and most startups miss is understanding their target market, like, or even knowing that they need to identify a target market and then really cater their offerings and their messaging to that target market. Like, a lot of, companies think you're just going to throw, oh, we have this great offering, we're just going to throw it out there. And like, the masses are going to go, oh, this is so amazing. Let me just gobble this up. Right. And that just simply isn't reality. And it isn't the truth. Like, as a business, you have to, and oftentimes it's a process. In fact, if you listen to some of the really great stories of, some of the big brands you mentioned, like Uber earlier, or Airbnb, or Starbucks, you listen to some of those stories or read some of those stories, and generally there's a process of, okay, we are going to iterate. We're going to throw some spaghetti on the wall, and we're going to see what sticks and who it sticks with. And then we begin to identify, a friend of mine, and I think you may know Bassam Salem, but his business Atlas RTX, I know that, they were throwing some spaghetti against the wall. And I hope it's okay that I mentioned this. I hope, in fact, it was Bassam's birthday yesterday, but I hope that he's okay with me mentioning this. But I know that, within the first 18 months or so, they really identified that their product was really resonating with the building industry, single family home, multifamily home kind of industry, some commercial. And so that's where they finally, honed in on, okay, this is our avatar. This is the persona. Now we have to really understand that persona and understand, how to cater our messaging, to them, and cater the product, right? Cater the offering to them. For me in my business, that's been, in a 23-year journey, has been a really difficult challenge, honestly, because our target persona is all over the map. Like, in some of our clients' organizations, it's a 23-year-old, female office manager. In some of our client organizations, it's a 63-year-old COO of a very mature organization, right? And everything in between. Like, sometimes it's just the default. In fact, in some of the organizations that we work with, our point of contact is the marketing director or the CMO, because that person just happens to understand technology a little bit better than anybody else in the organization. So they're made the point person over technology, right? So it's all over the map. For us, and you can tell me if our approach is even remotely accurate or what you might recommend. For us, it's been a matter of understanding the pain and the gain. There is a common thread. It doesn't matter the age, it doesn't matter the gender, it doesn't matter their position within those organizations. There's generally a fairly common thread between the pain and the gain, and what they're really looking for out of a valuable partnership. And that's where we've built our brand and our messaging, and that's where we've built our offerings to be, to really address what those pains are and what they're looking for above and beyond the pain. So I don't know, you tell me if that seems like a sound approach.
It is a very sound approach, and it's a proven approach, actually. A few years ago, I ran multiple campaigns at once for the company that I was managing the marketing for. And again, this was back at Navigator Business Solutions. But we had a vertical approach to different industries. And my boss at the time taught me something, which even today at Gravitate, I use this phrase all the time, which is create, validate, replicate. And it was fascinating because we had these vertically specific campaigns that were running, but there was such commonality within those pains and gains, even though the industries were completely different. And so we would take that commonality and double down on the pain. And in doing so, we were speaking the right language to them, where it's like, I just want to be successful at my job. I want to be able to be the hero where I'm providing, some sort of transparency and clarity to the company so that we can grow and thrive and achieve all the goals that we want. Well, that was the messaging that we would duplicate across all of these campaigns, and then we'd fill it in with the specifics of that particular industry. And so, like you say, Earl, you've got multiple client personas that you're trying to attract, but at the core of it, those pains are fairly generic. And if you can understand those pains and to go to where they're at and to understand that pain to the deepest level that you can, you're going to be able to speak the language and in doing so, build the trust, especially as, if you take it from the brand component into the marketing, where you're basically blasting with multiple initiatives and having multiple touch points, you're going to generate leads and have the opportunity for some at-bats.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thanks for confirming that we're not completely off base with our strategy.
I already know that you're a brilliant marketer, so the proof is in the pudding, my friend.
I wouldn't say brilliant, but it's definitely something I've had to learn. It wasn't, having graduated in civil engineering and then dedicate most of my professional career to technological engineering and cybersecurity. Marketing was never my strong suit, but it's something that I've had to learn. And once I made that shift of, okay, I used to spend as a leader of this organization 80+% of my time on the technical side of the organization, right? And now I'm definitely 60% of my time on the marketing and sales side of the organization, and the fruits have shown that to be the right approach, right? The right strategy. But it's definitely something I've had to learn. I've had to go teach myself by learning from masters and mentors like yourself, and going to boot camps and going to week-long seminars, and that kind of stuff, right? So we're coming down, here, at the end of the hour, but I know we wanted to talk a little bit about positioning your unique selling proposition, your unique value proposition. How do you position your identity and do that in an effective way? Maybe if you can answer that in just a couple minutes. I know that's a challenge, but go for it.
Yeah, and again, I think that it goes back to the basics that we've already covered, which is, number one, who is our audience? And if we understand who the audience is, that's a huge component. Number two, if we understand what our unique selling, differentiator is compared to our competition is, that's where you're going to double down and say, okay, this is why we're different. We're not just another run-of-the-mill A, B, or C type of company. We do things differently, and here's the proof in the pudding, to where you're creating a little bit of enough of a transition off of what the norm is, to where it's going to be memorable. It's going to be something that resonates with people. And then it's just all about consistency. There's a gentleman, and we haven't had an opportunity to talk about this, but in the day and age that we live in, business branding is one thing, and then there's personal branding, which is a whole other ball of wax, right? There's a gentleman by the name of Ryan Serhant, who is a real estate broker in New York. And I'll be honest, Ryan Serhant is not necessarily my cup of tea. He's different, but I've learned a lot of things from him. What he says is, number one, it's your core identity. Who are you? What's your reputation? Number two, and this is huge, it's consistent content across all platforms. So if you have that consistency, that's going to drive results. And then number three, and this is where it gets hard if you're trying to be within personal branding, you have to shout it from the mountaintops. You have to embrace it and self-promote. And a lot of times that's an uncomfortable position to be in. I feel like there are a lot better people who do self-promotion much greater than I do. But success begets success. And what I love that Ryan said, he says, brand brings in passive leads. And so if you can establish a brand that resonates, that connects with people, it's going to give you passive leads. Now, passive is maybe not the most authentic word in this scenario, just due to the fact that there's effort there. But if you're putting out that consistency and you're putting out the message and you're shouting it from the mountaintops, you're going to have success.
Yeah. Really great advice, Eric. This has been a fantastic hour, very educational. I want to thank you, again, for taking the time to share your experience, your journey, your knowledge, and skills with all of us. I know it's been I've got a whole page of notes here. I know it's been very valuable for me, and I know it has been for the audience as well. Just a little, maybe a little self-promotion of my own. Actually, today, my buddy Josh Pitts from Shred Media released a podcast that he and I did, actually probably 6 weeks or 8 weeks ago, about personal branding and the distinction between your business brand and your personal brand. And it was a fun, hour-long conversation with Josh. So that's out on Spotify. I did post about it across social media channels this morning. So, if you want to delve into that a little deeper, go check that out. I think Josh did really a good job of helping me develop that topic, throughout that hour. And I think there's a lot of value there. Anyways, I want to thank you again and thank everybody for joining us for this hour. This is TechBeat, where leaders learn, innovate, and grow. Again, keep an eye out in the coming weeks. We've got Josh himself, Josh Pitts from Shred Media, CEO, that's going to be joining me. Shar Ignacio from Hire CXO Pro. Rob Harder, the Executive Director of Christian Center Park City, Danny Tony from TonyCo, and other great leaders and entrepreneurs coming up here on TechBeat. So keep an eye out. Ericdahl, thank you for joining me, my friend. Really appreciate it. We're signing off. Everybody have a fantastic afternoon.
Thanks, Earl.